Plan to cheat on my husband at work. Before I was married, I knew nothing academic or intellectual about affairs. Growing up in a classically American suburban family where academic and athletic achievement was celebrated for daughters like me as well as sons, it was always assumed that I would marry and remain in a monogamous relationship forever. I never doubted this, and why should I when my parents, aunts, uncles, and neighbors, virtually all of them without exception, were happily married for many years? However, post facto, that is, after I had an affair just after my 32nd birthday, I explored the theory, realism, and intellectual aspects of why married women cheat. First, I examined some surprising statistics. They were unexpected, since most people like me believe that people who cheat are almost always caught, and that they almost always divorce after being caught. However, real credible sociological studies prove otherwise. Approximately 90% of women who admit to cheating never leave their husbands or get divorced. In addition, about 85% of women who cheat are never caught. This gave me the idea to find out why women cheat, because I myself could not easily determine why I cheated. The research here is more in line with conventional wisdom, although there are some surprises, and of course the issue is complex. So there is less accuracy here than in studies of how often cheaters are caught and how often they divorce if caught. However, it's clear from the research that the answer to this question is even more complicated than you might imagine. There is no one specific reason for infidelity, but researchers have identified 8 common themes that can be called excuses or reasons. 1. Boredom. This reason may be the primary reason for women over 40 who are not pursuing a career, but can occur among other categories of women as well. 2. Low self-esteem. Low self-esteem can be caused by failure in career, motherhood, or intelligence, but most often it is a perceived lack or decrease in physical attractiveness. 3. Emotional starvation. Women who feel neglected by their husbands may experience an overpowering sense of loneliness. This is especially common for women whose husbands are stingy with praise and don't often show love and affection. 4. Anger. Anger can be triggered for many reasons, including the emotional hunger discussed above. Most often, however, anger leads to infidelity if the husband cheats or suspects the wife of cheating. A wife may cheat as revenge, even if she has prioritized the marital relationship in the past. 5. Agitation. Every woman has a different temperament, and it does not change when she gets married. If a woman has a need for excitement, whether it's on the dance floor, participating in dangerous activities, sports, or anything else, before marriage, it won't change overnight when she says, "I do." For example, if a woman has been a top athlete all her life, and then marriage and children robbed her of the competitiveness she felt when participating in sports, cheating may be her exciting replacement. 6. Power. The socially accepted norm in marriage even today is that the man asks the woman out, the man pays for dinner, the man proposes marriage, etc. Some women, especially high-achieving women, may feel limited by this norm. As one scientific study says, they always felt like they were chosen rather than they chose, and then they go online to Ashley Madison or any other site, and there are all these men, and now they are choosing rather than being chosen. 7. Sexual deprivation. Obviously, people age differently, and their libido changes differently as they age. According to rough statistics, men's libido peaks in their 30s and women's in their 20s. However, the diversity is so great that generalizations are almost useless. One statistic is still telling. A mismatch in libido causes relationship problems for 48% of women compared to 41% of men. If a wife's libido has increased after marriage and her husband's has decreased, the lack of regular and/or rewarding sex, even if it's not verbalized, can greatly increase the wife's chances of cheating. 8. Simply because the opportunity arose. This reason seems most outrageous to the average person, i.e. those who have not studied infidelity from an intellectual perspective. However, the same study cited above in 6 found there is a lot of data showing that a woman who has had an affair with a coworker is more likely to report, "My marriage is wonderful and I am very satisfied. I literally saw an opportunity and took it." Of all of these excuses, when taken together, one thing is clear. Wives who cheat are not necessarily unhappy with their husbands or married life, nor do they even consider it disrespectful to their husbands. In fact, according to one study, 1/3 of cheating wives characterize their marriage as happy or very happy and express the deepest respect for their husband. Another surprising fact: the average cheating wife did not find her lover significantly more physically attractive than her husband. The above factual information in no way implies that cheating is not vicious or potentially destructive. It is. The above information simply makes it easier to understand intellectually. All the details of my early life and courtship and the physical characteristics of my husband and me will contribute nothing to this story. Let me summarize some essential facts. My name is Alicia Hunt. I was 32 years old when this story began and had been married for 9 years at that point. I have a degree from Cornell in hotel management and was a competitive tennis player in high school and college. My husband is Warren Hunt, who was 33 at the time this story was written. He has a degree in environmental engineering from Cornell and was a cross-country runner there. Warren and I have 2 children, a boy age 7 and a girl age 6. I am better than average looking, but not Elizabeth Hurley or Jennifer Lopez. Warren is also better than average looking, but not a movie star. My marriage was, and still is, happy, and I truly love Warren and my children. From the age of 26, working as an assistant manager of a prestigious hotel in the suburbs of a major American city, I interacted daily with people from all over the world. Most of the contacts have been pleasant, though of course there have been the occasional problem guests. One of the not-so-pleasant realities of my position is that I am harassed daily, most often by traveling businessmen. In some cases, I don't mind it as it boosts my self-esteem. In other cases, especially if the hitter is obnoxious, I hate it but usually keep a smile on my face. About once a quarter, circumstances at the hotel, especially when it's completely full, require the assistant manager to stay there overnight. On such occasions, the assistant manager occupies a simple room, essentially a single bed and bath, next to the south staircase on the 2nd floor. This June, I was assigned as the assistant manager on duty for 2 nights when a problem arose the first night. I was in my office, not yet able to retire to my room, when the receptionist frantically entered. "Alicia, we have a problem. A gentleman has arrived with a confirmed reservation that somehow got lost, and there are guests staying in all the rooms for the next 2 nights, without exception." The receptionist handed me the printout of the reservation confirmation the gentleman had given her, and when I entered the number into the computer, it turned out to be a legitimate confirmation number, even though for some inexplicable reason the reservation had been deleted from our computer system 2 days earlier. "What a load of crap," I muttered as I got up from the table to speak to the gentleman, sure he would go on a tirade, so I braced myself for a confrontation. When I entered the lobby, the first 3 things I noticed were that the gentleman was young, probably in his early 20s, that he was one of the 10 most handsome men I had ever seen in my life, and that there was no scowl or any other sign of anger on his face. "I understand you're Rob Baxter," I said with a smile, extending my hand in greeting. "I'm Alicia Hunt, the assistant manager on duty." "Nice to meet you, Ms. Hunt, or Mrs. Hunt," he replied with a smile, shaking my hand. Mrs. Hunt," I stammered, not sure why I was nervous, since he didn't seem ready to snap. "I'm sorry, but for some reason your reservation was canceled a couple days ago. I'm assuming you didn't cancel it." "No, I didn't cancel it. I made the reservation myself, and this is a very important business trip for me. I really need the room," he replied sincerely. "I have to be honest with you, Mr. Baxter. It seems we made a mistake. And unfortunately, all of our rooms are full. Not even the broom closet is in use." "Wow, Mrs. Hunt. I really need somewhere to stay. As I said, I have a very important meeting tomorrow. Is there anything you can do? I'm not familiar with your town." "Certainly, Mr. Baxter. Please come to my office and I will find a place for you." For the next half hour, Rob Baxter sat in my office, his usual smiling face on, despite the bad news that had piled up. All my calls to all the hotels within a 10-mile radius were finding no vacancies due to 2 conventions and a baseball tournament. The only motel with rooms available was just a barracks, and I sure didn't want to send Rob Baxter there. When I wasn't on the phone, we had a very pleasant conversation, although I admit I was a little concerned about my body's reaction to him, something I hadn't experienced since I'd met Warren a long time ago. Just when I was losing hope, the decision became crystal clear. "Rob," I said, we were calling each other by name by then, "the only alternative is to take the assistant manager's room. It's perfectly ordinary. We'd never rent it out because it's basically a bed and bathroom, maybe 12 by 14 feet. But if it's acceptable, we'll certainly not charge you and give you a certificate for 2 free nights next time you come." I smiled. "Can I see the room, Alicia?" "Sure. Just first, I'll get my stuff out of it," I started to say when he interrupted me. "Are you telling me that this is your room and you have to stay the night? There's no way I'm kicking you out. I'm staying in the hall," he replied sincerely. "I live only 3 miles from here, and the steward will understand if I leave the premises under such circumstances. I insist," I replied. I led Rob into the room, the only one in the entire building with a manual key rather than an electronic key, put my things away, and while he was getting settled, I said, "I'm also sorry I can't give you my key. Only management has keys, so the door will be unlocked. But I assure you, we have an excellent security system, and if you'd like me to put something in the safe in my office, I'll be happy to do so." "I'll just take my laptop with me to breakfast," he said, still in a good mood. "No problem." "Breakfast? I forgot," I smiled. I took one of my cards, wrote "Free breakfasts for Mr. Baxter," indicated the dates of the next 2 mornings, and signed it. "Just give this to the waiters. I'll pay the tip too, so your breakfast will be completely free." "Thank you, Alicia. You've been very kind." As I walked back to my office, a strange tingling sensation swept over me. I tried to ignore it, but when it was about 10:30 p.m. on the clock, I decided it was time to call it a day. I told the receptionist, the security guard, and any other employees staying the night to call me on my cell phone if there were any problems, and that I would be back at 7 a.m. I headed home hoping there would be no problems, but made sure my cell phone was charged and turned on. When I got home, of course, the kids had already gone to bed, and Warren was surprised to see me. I briefly explained how I had to give up my room and keep my cell phone next to the bed, and then I purred, "I hope this won't be unpleasant for you," and ran my index finger across his chest. Afterward, my husband and I made love, and then went to bed. In the middle of the night, I woke up because I wanted to make love again, and Warren and I did it again. Even as I left to go back to the hotel the next morning, I could still feel the tingling in my body. However, a smile was shining on my face. When I arrived at the hotel a few minutes before 7 in the morning, everything seemed to be working normally, and there were no problems from the day before. I breathed a sigh of relief as I walked through the restaurant to say hello to the guests and staff before being relieved of my duties around 9 a.m. As I walked through the restaurant, I bumped into Rob. "Hi, Rob," I said cheerfully. "I hope everything went well last night." "It went great, Alicia. Thanks again. Maybe you could keep me company. I have a few questions about the area," he said with a wide grin. Normally, I wouldn't agree, but I needed to keep his favor, as there was a chance that even though it wasn't my fault, I could be blamed for the mix-up if a complaint came in. I sat with him while one of the waitresses brought me a cup of coffee. Rob and I had a very pleasant conversation for about 20 minutes and answered a few of his questions about the neighborhood, as he was thinking of moving if an opportunity came up in his company. We exchanged information about our families. He had been married to Melissa, a beautiful, slender blonde, if the picture he showed me was true, for 5 years. They had a baby boy and were hoping to have another one soon. When the waitress brought the check, I took it, gave her $5 from my wallet as a tip, and wished Rob good luck. I had another brief chat with Rob that evening and another the next morning. At checkout, I presented him with a certificate for 2 free nights of his choice in a superior room. That night, Warren got 2 lovemaking sessions again. True, I had to go back to the hotel to take care of a little unforeseen business, but Warren didn't complain because I made love to him as soon as I got back. About a week after Rob checked out, I got a call from corporate, the CEO herself. Usually she was tough, but not this time. Alicia, I just received the most flattering letter about you from a client named Robert Baxter. He couldn't stop singing your dithyrambs about how you helped him in a difficult situation and what a favorable impression you left on his entire company when he told his colleagues about your help. That letter, obviously it played only a small part, but it certainly helped, was the catalyst for me to be promoted to manager shortly after the current manager retired, beating out 2 other long-serving assistants. Rob stayed with us 4 times over the next few months, and each time we had a very pleasant conversation. The 4th time he asked if I could have lunch with him, as he had more questions about the neighborhood. Over lunch, he told me that he, Melissa, and their baby were moving to the neighborhood, and he wanted to see if I had any suggestions on where to look for a house. Melissa is coming with him next week, and they would like to look around. I told him I would put him in touch with a real estate agent I trusted, and insisted that he and Melissa come to our house for dinner after they looked around. Dinner with Rob and Melissa and some of our friends was very nice, and they seemed like a great couple. Warren really liked them. They ended up buying a house about 3 miles from ours. Rob's new position with his company in our neighborhood required him to have regular conferences. He liked our facilities better than the ones his company was using, so he contracted with us to host conferences. I gave him a friendly discount and made sure we met our obligations, for which I received praise from my superiors. There was only one problem. Every time I socialized with Rob, I ended up making wild love to Warren that same night, and visions of Rob would sometimes penetrate me. Upon realizing this, I tried to put an end to it, but my mind wouldn't give in. The fateful event. It was Tuesday, before lunch, when Rob and I were discussing the details of a particularly important conference he was hosting in our main ballroom. I usually communicated with Rob directly first, rather than with the event staff, and then relayed everything to them. I felt especially warm that day, even though I was wearing a shorter skirt and a lighter blouse than usual, hopefully not unconsciously, because I knew I was meeting Rob that day. I was more nervous than usual, probably because Rob wasn't just looking at me, he was staring at me intently. I dropped the document, and we both bent over to pick it up at the same time, and our heads collided. We laughed as we stood up, but neither of us had the document, and we rubbed our foreheads. Suddenly, Rob's smirk turned into a grim look. He grabbed me and kissed me on the lips. Without hesitation, I kissed him back just as zealously. When we broke the kiss, he murmured, "I have to have sex with you." Again, without hesitation, I replied, "Meet me in 5 minutes in the assistant manager's room on the 2nd floor where you stayed the first night here." Kissing him again, I quickly left the ballroom and headed to the 2nd floor. After making sure no one could see me, I went into my room, called the assistant manager on duty and told him I would be gone for a while and to take care of any issues, and then undressed. I took a quick shower and was lying unclothed on the extra sheet I'd put on the bed when Rob walked into the room. There was no point in hiding it. We both knew what was going to happen. Rob locked the door, threw off his clothes in record time, and then had sex with me. I was glad I had time to shower. From time to time, we lay facing each other, him caressing my body and me caressing his. We didn't say much at first, just stared into each other's souls. Finally, he spoke. "I've wanted to make love to you ever since I saw you. It was only my love for Melissa that kept me in control. I don't know why I lost it today. I do love Melissa, you know that." "I know you do," I replied. "I love Warren too, with all my heart. However, ever since I met you, I've had wet laundry syndrome. I only lost it today because you kissed me." "Is wet underwear syndrome a real condition?" He grinned. "It's real to me when I'm around you," I grinned back. After a few more minutes of pleasant and informative pillow talk, a smirk appeared on his face. "You know I should make love to you again, right?" "Tonight or in the future?" I replied lightly. "Both," he hummed. "Then I guess I'd better get to work," I grinned. We had sex for about 90 minutes when we both realized that we'd better get back to the real work, not the fantasies that had turned into reality during the last 90 minutes of work. We didn't shower together for fear of a long delay in getting out. He showered first, and after another kiss left me ready to shower on my own. Needless to say, I was pretty much out of it for the rest of the day, but pulled myself together before we left for home. Even though he and I had slept together that day, I had led Warren to believe that he was initiating sex with me and then making love to me. I wanted to know immediately if he suspected anything. Given his condition, I was sure he didn't. Rob and I had sex with each other to the point of unconsciousness around lunchtime each of the next 3 days, Wednesday through Friday, before bringing rational thought to our relationship. I wanted to make love to Warren every night, but I thought he might suspect something, especially considering how energetic I was. So I only made love to him on Thursday night, but all weekend. Rob and I only slept together once on Friday, when our pillow banter turned into a serious conversation. Neither of us seemed to want to stop, despite the love we have for our spouses. I started the conversation. However, we can't continue at this pace. "You're right," Rob replied. "Besides, neither of us have even thought about STDs. Don't you think we should get tested?" "Yes, we should. I'm going to get tested on Monday," I replied. "I'll probably go tomorrow," Rob replied. "What do you think a normal schedule should be and how would it work?" he asked. "I've actually been thinking about it a lot the last 2 days," I replied. "We'll buy phones, work out a date and time code, and we'll always use this room. You'll park near the secured entrance or exit on the west side of the hotel. I'll turn off the cameras in that area and the alarms 5 minutes before you arrive and turn them back on 5 minutes after you leave. I suggest we do this every 2 weeks, varying the day of the week." Rob grinned. "Sounds like a plan. But what about once a week? Now that I know what a tigress you are, I might need it more often than once every 2 weeks." "We'll see," I laughed. "I'm sure I'll have the test results by Thursday of next week, and if we're both clean, why don't we schedule a meeting for 11:30 a.m. next Thursday? You'll buy 2 phones at some out-of-state place, preferably without cameras, and I'll have the code worked out by Thursday." "I'm in on that plan," Rob hummed. "But my friend wants in on the other one." "God, you're just an animal," I pretended to complain. "Let's do it in the shower." "In this low-down thing," said Rob. "It won't be easy," I grinned and jumped off the bed before he could grab me. It was a challenge, but we made it through because our will was strong. Over the next year, we had 36 sex sessions, almost always over lunch. 1 to 3 times per session, usually 2. Yes, I was really counting. 35 of those times I made love to Warren that night. My libido was so high after my session with Rob that I needed more. By the second year, we had 84 sex sessions. The only reason for that was that Melissa was pregnant and had been on bed rest for the last 3 months, so sex with her was unacceptable to Rob. That year, especially after the frequency and intensity of sex with Warren hadn't diminished, I had more sex than I'd ever had in my life. From the 3rd through 5th year of our relationship with Rob, We had an average of 32 sessions a year. We only slept together overnight once in the 5 years of our relationship. In fact, slept over was the mistake of the year. Luckily, our sleepover was in the city, away from home, where I stayed 2 nights on business and Rob only stayed the first. I could barely walk the next day, and it took another day and night to recover enough to not be legless when I got home. For the last 6 months of our relationship, the sex was as excellent as it had ever been. But Rob often seemed a little yearning if I captured his moods correctly. Endgame. Over the 5 years of our relationship, Rob and I were among the 85% of cheaters who never get caught. In my opinion, there were 3 reasons for this. First, we truly loved our spouses, and almost without exception, the time Rob and I spent together did not take away from the time we would have spent with our spouses. Second, due to the unique situation that I was the manager of a hotel close to my home and his office, and we had a spare room for discretionary use, we didn't have the usual problem of finding a secret location for our extracurricular activities. Third, we were always careful. We never left marks on each other, except on 2 occasions, but under such circumstances that they could be easily explained away. Never talked to anyone about our situation, never exchanged emails or texts, and when we did communicate in the presence of others, which was usually about 10 or 12 times a year, we never exchanged secret glances or body language indicating any sympathy for each other. I don't know how long our relationship would have lasted had it not been for an unfortunate cataclysmic event. At least there was no desire on my part to end the relationship. The relationship with Rob was very important to me. The sad cataclysmic event was when Melissa died in a car accident a few days before the 5th anniversary of Rob and I's relationship. For Rob, this was simply devastating. Now he had 2 young children to take care of without the love of his life. Neither of us said anything about it explicitly, and sex between Rob and I stopped immediately after this horrible event. Myself and Rob's other friends did everything we could to cheer him up and help him cope, but 2 months later he was still having a very hard time. That's when he called me on my landline, which he hadn't used in 2 months. Alicia, first of all, thank you for helping me through my dark days in the last 2 months. I don't know what I would have done without you and my other friends. You know I was only too happy to help Rob. I'm still very sorry for you and the kids. If there's anything else I can do to help, let me know. Actually, there is one more thing. I'm going back to the town where Melissa and I are from and where our families still live. But before I leave, I'd like to meet you one more time in our little corner of paradise on the 2nd floor of the hotel. Will you be able to make it? Sure, Rob, but when? I'm leaving Saturday morning, so I'd like to come around 11 a.m. Thursday morning and stay until 1 o'clock. Will that work? I knew I'd have to change my schedule a little, but this was more important, so I said, Sure, I'll see you then. Our last time together was bittersweet. For the first 5 minutes, he cried in my arms. When he pulled out, he sincerely said, One of the reasons I'm leaving is because I fell in love with you. There's no way I'm going to try to ruin your happy life with Warren and the kids, but I just can't have a simple relationship with you anymore now that I've admitted to myself that I love you. That explained his wistful mood in the last few months before Melissa's death. After a tender kiss with tears in our eyes, we made love. That's right, we didn't have sex. We made love, and twice. As Rob was leaving, we kissed tenderly. In parting, he said, I've only loved 2 women in my life. One of them is dead, and I can't have the other. Who knows, maybe number 3 is the charm. I was internally sad for a while after Rob left, but my busy life and the love of my family didn't allow the sadness to show outwardly or linger for long. The last thing I did to leave Rob in the rearview mirror was to further analyze which of the themes described in the first part of this story were the causes of my infidelity. While my relationship with Rob was certainly very exciting, 5 above, as he was an outstanding lover and an attractive man, and while there may have been a small element of power, 6, The overwhelming reason seems to have been that an opportunity simply presented itself. 8. Fortunately, my cheating didn't turn me into a complete cheater. In fact, in the 6 years since Rob left, I haven't had the slightest interest in a relationship with another man other than Warren, and Warren and I have a very fulfilling, loving relationship. Prior to writing this story, the last time I really consciously thought about Rob or our relationship was when I received a picture of Rob in the mail about 5 years ago. In the picture, Rob was wearing a tuxedo and had his arm around a woman who looked a lot like me in a wedding dress. They were surrounded by 3 small children. 2 of them were Rob's, and the other was probably the woman's, as the 2 younger children looked to be the same age. There was no letter attached to the photo. However, there was a note taped to the photo that said number 3 and a smiley face. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.